One more terrorist scare in Tokyo as the Allied leaders wrap up their economic summit. Good evening, I'm Randall Carlisle.
And I'm Michelle King. The man behind the Achille Lauro hijacking issues a direct threat against the United States. We'll have details next on KUTV News.
We therefore have to respond against America in America itself.
This is Channel 2, Salt Lake City. All tonight's news with Randall Carlisle, Michelle King, Mark Eubank has the weather, and Bill Marcroft the sports. This is KUTV News.
Good evening. There was another scare in Tokyo within the last few hours as Allied leaders opened up the last session of their economic summit.
It was only smoke bombs packed with firecrackers, but Japanese police feared another terrorist attack similar to the one which did minor damage on Sunday. Officials say the smoke bombs were designed to disrupt things in the Tokyo subway system, but there were no injuries and no effect on the ongoing summit. The Allied leaders are now wrapping up their talks, and they have agreed on a strong statement against terrorism in general and Libya specifically. They will ban arms sales to nations supporting terrorism and restrict sales to their embassies. But there was no endorsement of the two steps pushed hardest by President Reagan, economic sanctions and military action. Despite that, Secretary of State Schultz was uncharacteristically gleeful about the terrorist statement.
I think it's a terrific statement. I can't tell you how pleased I am at how strong this statement is.
As the Allied leaders put their statement together, there was a violent warning from one of the world's best-known suspected terrorists. Mohammed Abu Abbas said his Palestine Liberation Front will launch attacks against Americans inside the United States. Abbas is wanted in 3 countries, the United States, Italy, and Israel. He is suspected of being the mastermind behind several acts of terrorism in Israel and last year's ship hijacking of the Achille Lauro. Abbas says the U.S. will pay for its air raid on Libya.
In the beginning, our operations were only targeted at the Israeli enemy in Israel. America is now conducting the war against us on behalf of Israel. We therefore have to respond against America in America itself.
He was asked about the safety of Americans traveling in the Middle East.
It's the American taxpayer who's financing the American policies that decides his own fate. In my estimation, it is not our duty to be so considerate to the Americans as to stand by helpless and watch American shells kill our people.
Abbas also defended himself as a freedom fighter and not a terrorist.
The Palestinian is accused everywhere, hunted everywhere, and is the terrorist everywhere. This is the picture that Americans have. In fact, the Palestinian is a homeless refugee without the right to a passport, without the right to visit his village or birthplace or even his father's grave. The Palestinian has lived in a state of subjugation and oppression for 40 years. Is he now the terrorist?
Abbas freely admits that his group hijacked the Achille Lauro, but he says his men did not kill hostage Leon Klinghoffer. Michelle?
The Soviet Union continued its bit-by-bit account of what happened at the Chernobyl nuclear accident. The official news agency TASS said that radiation had spread beyond the 18-mile evacuation zone around Chernobyl, but that the Soviets did not say how far beyond. The Soviets did say that the fire is still burning at the Chernobyl plant. As for the radiation cloud hanging over parts of the United States, scientists say some radiation has been picked up at high altitudes, but not at ground levels. Rain in some areas is expected to bring the radiation to the ground, but only in minute amounts.
It won't be at levels that present any kind of concern, not prompting any of the kind of actions that you've seen in other countries.
Soviet television also continued its efforts to downplay the Chernobyl accident. Pictures broadcast today showed tranquil farm scenes said to be not far from the damaged reactor, and a 1950-style Geiger counter showed no evidence of radiation in the area. Then there was this man-on-the-street interview from Kiev, just 80 miles north of Chernobyl.
Where was the program Vremya? How did your working day go today? It went well. We worked. Well, the Western media say that there is a panic in Kiev. I wouldn't have said that. After all, we've got the international bicycle race here. Well, everybody's had to work during the holiday on the evacuation of the population of the area of Pripyat in Chernobyl. We had to transport and evacuate the population.
While the Soviets have been criticized for withholding information about Chernobyl, it came out today that Great Britain had said nothing about a nuclear accident there 4 weeks ago, and no one was hurt and the situation quickly contained, but there was never any government announcement until a British newspaper exposed the accident yesterday.
A warning tonight from a panel of health experts. They say many Americans are poisoning themselves with megadoses of vitamins, many times the recommended daily intake. Now, the experts say megadoses could damage the liver or kidney, but will not prevent diseases like cancer. And some hopeful news if you suffer from migraine headaches. Researchers have tested a group of people who have never found relief for their migraines using normally prescribed drugs. 3 out of 4 of those tested found significant relief taking daily doses of fish oil capsules.
Interesting.
I guess.
Coming up in this newscast, the preliminary hearing of Mark Hoffman resumes in Fifth Circuit Court.
And in Phoenix, Kennecott and its unions are talking again, but once again they're facing a deadline. We'll have those stories when KUTV News continues.
Get there, whatever pictures are going to take.
This is Freedom 7. The fuel is go. 1.2 G. Cabin at 14 PSI.
The Oath of a Free Man is one of Mark Hoffman's prized document finds. The document is purported to be the first printed in America and was nearly purchased by the Library of Congress for more than $1 million. Well, now evidence suggests that the document may be a forgery, evidence which surfaced during the Hoffman's preliminary hearing on fraud and merger charges. KUTV's Brian Schiffer reports.
A printing plate of the oath was ordered at this engraving shop in Salt Lake City. 5 days before, Mark Hoffman supposedly found the rare document in a New York City bookstore. A purchase receipt for the plate carried the name Mike Harris and a telephone number. A number prosecutors say matches Mark Hoffman's unlisted phone number. Another plate of the oath was later ordered at the same business. This time the name Mike Hansen was used. Prosecutors have already linked that name to Hoffman and to a receipt for the purchase of components used in the bombs that killed 2 people last October. The evidence suggests that the oath may be added to a long list of suspected forgeries sold by Hoffman. Earlier testimony Monday focused on the so-called McClellan collection of early Mormon documents. A rare book buyer for Deseret Book testified that Hoffman showed him a small piece of papyrus. He said Hoffman told him it was an ancient piece of Mormon scripture and part of the McClellan papers. East Coast documents dealer Kenneth Rendell has already identified the papyrus as part of a larger section he loaned Hoffman. He said the papyrus was Egyptian and had nothing to do with Mormon scripture. Prosecutors hope to show that Hoffman had dealt in bogus documents for years and that he built an elaborate fraud scheme around the McClellan collection. Prosecutors allege Hoffman may have killed to cover up such a scheme. Brian Schiffer, KUTV News.
A fire in Kirtland, Ohio destroyed an LDS church and nearby buildings which housed valuable historical documents. The loss includes artifacts, photographs, and documents dealing with the origin of the Mormon church in the community. The state fire marshal's office is investigating the cause to see if arson was involved. Randall?
Negotiators have nearly 2 months, but there was already a feeling that time is running out as Kennecott and its unions begin formal bargaining in Phoenix this week. The 2 sides remain far apart on everything from pay cuts to work rules. Today, Kennecott made it clear the company is not budging from the demands it made in February. The company wants workers to give up roughly 1/3 of their income. The unions want promises they'll get back later what they give up now.
So somebody gives up $5,000 a year in wages and benefits. Then we expect to get $5,000 of investment back from the company, either in terms of stock or in share of the profits.
During this 4-year period, what we'd be giving would be a return to secure employment and very meaningful employment, paying again the highest wages and benefits in most of our communities.
Kennecott says even with the concessions it's asking for, workers would make roughly $16 an hour in wages and benefits. The company says without drastic cuts, it cannot afford to reopen the Utah Copper Division with union labor. The Utah Division closed down more than a year ago. It appears tonight that former Utahn James Fletcher will soon be confirmed as the next chief administrator of NASA. There was more debate today in the U.S. Senate, but even opponents said that Fletcher will be approved when a vote is taken tomorrow. Fletcher, of course, will take over NASA during the time of its greatest crisis. Along with the shuttle disaster, the space agency is now faced with the problem of a Delta rocket shutdown on Saturday, forcing engineers to destroy the rocket. Today, two top officials of NASA said it's possible that an electrical short caused the premature shutdown. Destroyed along with the rocket was its payload of $57 million weather satellites.
Well, despite the problems at NASA, there was a highlight today for the space agency. It was 25 years ago today that Alan Shepard exclaimed, "Boy, what a ride." He was America's first space traveler after a 15-minute journey in 1961. As for NASA's problems of late, Shepard says they'll pull themselves together and they'll come back better than ever.
I like that. Boy, what a ride.
When I drove back tonight, my ride was great, better than ever from Ogden. Weather was wonderful.
Guess what it's doing west of us?
I don't want to know.
No, I know you don't. But it is storming. In fact, it's being called potentially dangerous. We'll check details right after this.
A power outage left an estimated 200,000 homes and businesses without electricity in the Salt Lake Valley this morning. The outage affected areas from the Salt Lake International Airport to the University of Utah and even disrupted long-distance phone service as far away as Idaho. UP&L officials say the cause was most likely a problem with a routine switching at a substation in western Salt Lake. The power was eventually restored by 10 a.m. No damage or injuries reported.
Sounds like more of us will be caught in something much worse come tomorrow, if what you say is true.
It's coming in kind of a couple of pieces, and one part starts tomorrow, and then it gets real wrapped up the next day. So the whole week looks kind of unsettled. Tonight, we're looking at some cool temperatures. In fact, today started off on the cold side. Look at the 20s in here. You know where the coldest spot in the nation was, the coldest town? 17 at Bryce Canyon in Utah. Cold, cold air all in this pocket behind a storm that went up over here. Now this afternoon's highs, 40s and 40s. This is from another storm coming, and this is from an old storm going out, but there were 90s. The town of Lajitas, Texas, reached 100 degrees even. With all the 80s and springtime going on here, that says the main anchor high pressure aloft is here. With all the cold weather in the west, the big anchor low pressure is here. And so storm after storm falls into this zone and keeps getting us. Tonight, there's a little like a wave on a front roaring along through Nevada, but the main cold air sits back here. It's snowing in the Sierra Nevadas of California. The wind has been howling. And speaking of wind, this old storm had winds commonly 50 to 70 miles an hour in gusts during the last 24 hours. Just real bad, nasty bunch of wind. This one has a lot of mountain wind, but so far the valleys have been okay, although we had reports tonight from Marysville near Sacramento that it was hailing. And the air in this storm up here is as cold as you ever see it in wintertime. It's impressively cold, and that's bad. Let's check today's temperatures and see how we did. This time of the year, we usually go up to 68, 57, kind of a cool day. Most of the rainfall came in the last 24 hours, but some spots were still wet. The storm in total over the weekend brought a 1/4 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch along the Wasatch Front. St. George today with sunshine managed to get up to an 80. Evanston had another 1 inch of snow. There was 3 on the ground earlier today. And Montpelier, Idaho, they got their field work done on Saturday, but they shivered today with temperatures in the 40s. It was 20 at Fairview, Utah, almost the coldest spot in the nation. Salt Lake right now, high clouds are increasing and thickening rapidly. Look at the barometer, 2970, and the barometer is going down. Temperature outside is 50. Elsewhere, how about Topeka, Kansas? A big bad thunderstorm. They're getting hail. Elko, 39, and there are rain showers going on. And guess who has snow? Lake Tahoe, windy, 33 degrees, and snowing at 10 p.m. Satellite pictures are showing. You can almost see a little kinky looking thing in here, a little like a wave going by, but the cold air is here, and this is the heart. I mean, this thing has mid-winter air. As this drops into Nevada, it should develop a major spring storm that the Weather Service terms potentially dangerous. Probably more to the livestock than the people, but still, it'll be a wild old thing. Radar screens are showing that the rain has now stepped out clear over to the border with moderate precipitation following with the upper level low. Well, by this time tomorrow, rain and showers and thunderstorms and blustery and cold and gusty. Then it develops into a snowstorm Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. There's a winter storm watch for the mountains, likely to be changed to a warning by tomorrow morning. Well, here's the forecast for the Wasatch Front. Showers and cold tomorrow, but this will be a treat compared to Wednesday's temperatures. Southern Utah will have a lot of wind and even some showers. Elsewhere in Utah, temperatures sort of okay, but that's the last warmer one. In Wyoming, how about tomorrow, 50s and then stormy on Wednesday. 5 days says 56, 40s, benches, 3 to 6 inches of snow, while the mountains, another 1 to 2 feet. But good news, by the weekend, warmer and drier by Saturday, Sunday.
Well, that'd be nice for a change. We've had some pretty poor weekends in the past. Thanks, Mark. Still to come, the final chapter in the real-life Ted Bundy saga is a step closer tonight.
And we'll continue our series on Ted Bundy, the man who was called the first serial murderer.
Well, today our Celebrate Utah tour took us to Ogden, our second city in a 21-day tour of the state. You might call Ogden the New York City of Utah. Considering its size, it's the most cosmopolitan city in the state. The railroad brought in this diverse group over the years, making Ogden the railway center of the Intermountain area. A lot of redevelopment is going on downtown, projects like the historic 25th Street renovation. And a lot of big corporations are moving in, bringing new jobs and new opportunity. Tomorrow at 4:30 and 6, we'll report live from Morgan, known for its mink ranching, plus a look at plans for the Trappers Loop Highway. As part of our celebration of Utah, we discovered the Weber County court system has entered the age of high-tech video. The Circuit Court in Ogden is the only court in Utah that conducts daily video arraignments. The procedure is designed to eliminate an inmate's contact with the public by televising the proceedings to a specially equipped room in the jail. This would prevent an incident like Ronnie Lee Gardner's deadly escape attempt, in which a bystander was killed while Gardner was being taken from a jail cell to the courtroom. The experiment is receiving praises from both judges and attorneys. Others critical of the program say the video arraignments seem cold because they eliminate human contact between the judge and the accused.
The U.S. Supreme Court today refused to hear Ted Bundy's appeal of his Florida murder convictions. That clears the way for Florida's governor to set the date for his execution. Bundy, the former Utah law student and convicted Utah kidnapper, has been the subject of the 4-hour TV movie The Deliberate Stranger, which concluded tonight on Channel 2. Bundy's attorneys called the timing of the movie unfortunate, although they did not infer that the movie had any influence on today's court decision. Tonight, our reporter Larry Warren concludes his series of reports on Bundy with a look at what life is like on Florida's death row.
When Ted Bundy killed in Florida, he killed in a state one lawyer calls the buckle in the death penalty belt of America. Utah may have reactivated the death penalty with its execution of Gary Gilmore, but it is Florida which has embraced it with zeal. So far, 15 men have been strapped to this chair and electrocuted. 240 men remain on Florida's death row, including Ted Bundy. He lives in a cell just a short walk from Old Sparky, the morbid nickname for the Florida chair. His wife visits him regularly. In a bizarre but perfectly legal ceremony during his second Florida murder trial, he married longtime Seattle friend Carol Boone.
Will you marry me? Yes. And I do hereby marry you.
When Bundy's jail confinement was less severe and visiting requirements less strict, Bundy and his bride consummated their marriage. Today, the convicted murderer and suspect in as many as 36 murders of young women is the father of a little girl.
I think that Bundy is finally getting down to the point where he's going to pay for what he did in Florida.
Hayward may be right. Every Wednesday, the lights dim in Bundy's cell as the generator is cranked up to test out the voltage on Old Sparky. Bundy's execution date was scheduled for March 4th, but stayed by the U.S. Supreme Court. Still, the appeal process is running out. The final execution date is up to the vagaries of the appeals process, but his avenues for legal escape are few.
Bundy's only other possible escape is the kind he's been known for in the past. He's thought about it recently. A year ago, his jailers discovered one of the steel bars on his cell cut. What few privileges a death row inmate has were taken away, along with the hacksaw blade. But as Bundy and the other 239 inmates on Q Wing know, no one has ever escaped from Florida's death row. Larry Warren, KUTV News.
We began our newscast with the Tokyo Summit. You're telling me we missed another summit?
There was another summit, and it started today. The Utah Jazz Summit meeting at Park City started. Supposedly, it'll end up tonight. Frank Layden said on his weekly radio show at 6 this evening that the talk was mostly financial, and there was no specific discussion of trading anybody. Well, I assume since the meeting is closed, so is the information coming out of it. Philadelphia's Charles Barkley today was named the pivotal player of the year in the NBA, so he went out and tried to beat the Bucks all by himself. But Milwaukee had Sidney Moncrief. They weren't supposed to, although he was limping badly. He had 13 points. It was tied 60-all at the half. Now, pivotal means that you do everything, and here's a great example. Barkley saves the ball, goes into the stands, gets some help, comes back down the floor and jams it. 37 points, 14 rebounds, 9 assists. But in the end, it appeared Milwaukee was destined to win this one. Paul Pressey gives the Bucks a 2-point lead, and he had 17 for the night. Moments later, Ricky Pierce splits the defense. He had 19, and the Milwaukee Bucks even up the series at 2 games apiece, winning by 5. Now, St. John Center's 6'8" Walter Berry announced today that he sent a letter to the NBA before the Saturday midnight deadline, and he's turning pro. Now, with Berry coming out, the Jazz figured they might get a shot at a top 10 senior in the upcoming college player draft. In the Stanley Cup playoffs, New York Rangers, Montreal Canadiens in sudden death overtime. Claude Lemieux on a breakaway with the game winner. The Montreal Canadiens now lead the Rangers 3-0, winning tonight 4-3. Now, the next story could be called the price of receivers or the prices of college football in Utah. Carl Arkey explains.
It's safe to say that most fans hardly noticed number 89 when he took the field Friday night. But up in the stands, there was one set of eyes watching his every move and reacting just as any father would.
It's been really a good experience for me to go through what most parents do, and I think it's made me a better coach.
A better coach for Weber State, which is where Mike Price makes his living and where Eric Price elected not to play his college football.
He didn't pressure me to come to Weber at all. He said he'd like to have me, but, you know, it might be good to get out of the house.
There's more to college experience than just living at home with his dad, who's overbearing and makes him, you know, make his bed every morning.
So now son Eric makes his bed and attends classes at the University of Utah, where he walked on to Jim Fossil's team this spring with the blessings of his father, of course. But Mike Price is only human, and it's only natural that a father should want his son on his side.
That arrangement works quite nicely at BYU, where Jimmy Edwards sees duty at split end in his famous father's offense. But Eric Price wasn't sure that was right for him.
Didn't really want to be treated as the coach's son. I wanted to be treated as one of the guys, you know. I'd always see the guys on TV, you know, playing. I was like, God, I could play up in that big league, you know. So I just wanted to just see if I can make it at a higher league than that. And if not, then I'd go back to Weber and play.
And if that comes to pass, Papa Price won't mind one bit.
He's got a little of his dad's running ability, so he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he can catch the ball.
Fortunately, Eric won't be catching the ball against the Wildcats. Since Utah isn't on Weber State's schedule in the foreseeable future, the Prices will at least be able to keep a little peace in the family. Carl Arkey, KUTV Sports.
St. George's Bruce Hurst threw an 8-hit shutout of the California Angels tonight. He's now 2-2 on the season, and Boston has won 7 of their last 8 games. The final score, Boston 3-0 over California. It was New York beating Chicago 4-1. Toronto, a big win over Oakland. Only a partial. This was a rain delay. Detroit is leading Texas in the 5th. Milwaukee over Seattle. Cleveland edged Kansas City. An abbreviated schedule, only 2 games in the National League. Atlanta beat Cincinnati in 11, and it was Montreal over Philadelphia.
Thank you very much. We're going to continue to cover the summit. Thank you, Bill. We'll be right back.
They earned perfect scores in Olympic ice skating competition, and now they're professionals hoping to earn a living with their flawless skating style. British skating champions Jane Torvill and Christopher Dean brought their world tour to the Salt Palace tonight. Salt Lake is one of 16 American cities that they'll visit on their 6-week tour. Their ice dancing company was a year in the making, and the former gold medalists are proud of what makes their show different.
And so that's where our originality lies, is that we're still a skating show. We're not trying to put other things on stage. You know, we don't have Smurfs and we don't have a juggling act or anything like that.
Now, all of these skaters have won national and international skating competitions, and they were handpicked by Torvill and Dean.
May not have Smurfs, but they have interesting costumes. That's true. Let's stay on the ice now for a wedding, one that doesn't seem very intimate or romantic, just different. The Ice Arena in Muskegon, Michigan. Now, just before the Muskegon Lumberjacks play the Fort Wayne Comets, Lisa Stopp and Gary Sharphorn walk through the romantic honor guard of hockey sticks. That's nice, isn't it? They say their vows at center court, then they kiss in front of 5,000 fans. They won the wedding in a contest sponsored by a radio station, and while they may not have loved the actual marriage in front of everyone, they couldn't turn down the honeymoon and all-expense-paid trip to the city of love and romance, Paris, France.
Kind of a cold start, but it might heat up in Paris, huh?
It might. Paris is a great town, right? Have a good evening. We'll see. She'll be in Morgan tomorrow night at 4:30 and 6, and back here at 10, and I'll be in the studio, so we'll see you then.